comes from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 9, verses 23 to 27. And the Word of God says, "Then he said to them all, 'Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross daily and follow me. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for me will save it. What good is it for someone to gain the whole world and yet lose or sacrifice their very self? Whoever is ashamed of me and my words, the Son of Man will be ashamed of them when he comes in his glory and in the glory of the Father and of the holy angels. Truly I tell you, some who are standing here will not taste death before they see the kingdom of God.'" May God bless the reading of his word. And now we have Reverend Miles with the sermon.
Thank you. Thank you, Ellie. Well, it's good to see all of you here this morning, and such a pleasure to come back. A lot of new faces here for me, as our family left Kings Highway back in 1989 and moved to Arkansas, so we've been there ever since. But it's always fun to come back, and I suppose when your brother-in-law is your senior minister here, you get invited to come back like this, and I'm glad that David invites me to come and fill in when he's on vacation, and so it's just good to be here to see you all. And thank you, Ellie, for your wonderful hospitality and helping to lead worship this morning. I think that it was about 11 years ago when 4 different men, I don't know any of them, began a new communication network that many of you, if not all of you, are familiar with. It's called Twitter. Now, for any of you who are here this morning who are not familiar with Twitter, it gives you the ability to communicate through brief messages that are called tweets. Don't know how they came up with this language, but through tweets. And of course, you can post your own messages. But you can also follow those who are posting messages so that you can read about what they're doing and what they're saying and that sort of thing. Now, just for fun, by a show of hands, how many with us today are involved in using Twitter? Would you raise your hand? Okay. Not a whole lot. I think there may have been 2 or 3 hands that went up at the early service this morning. I don't have a Twitter account. I'll be honest with you. And I don't have any desire to get a Twitter account. I think it's fine for those who want to do it. But at least as of 5 months ago, I don't know if those statistics have changed at all in the last 5 months, but as of 5 months ago, I read that there are over 317 million people, not just in the United States, but worldwide. Over 317 million people who are involved in communicating through Twitter. And this article that I read named the 4 most important reasons why people are even involved in Twitter. I don't know if these are in any certain order, but networking is one. Promoting one's business is one. Sharing news is 3. And the last, I think, is probably the most prominent use of Twitter, and that is social communication. Now, as I understand Twitter, here's the key. In order for Twitter to be as effective as it can be, the goal is to have as many followers as you can get. Close to 2,000 years ago, as Jesus was walking the face of the earth, before, of course, social media was even a thought in that part of the world, Jesus was looking for followers. We heard his familiar words from the Gospel of Luke: if any man would come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross daily, and follow me. If any man would come after me. Man, of course, really means people. Any and all people. Well, Jesus issued this important invitation for people to follow him, not for his glory. It wasn't about Jesus, but for the glory of God. There was absolutely no self-promotion in what Jesus was doing. As the Son of God, Jesus issued the invitation for all people to follow him because it is through him that we come to God. As he said to Thomas on that occasion, I am the way, I am the truth, I am the life. No one comes to the Father but by me. Jesus made it perfectly clear that following him meant that we are to deny ourselves while taking up our cross daily to follow him. In other words, selfish living has no place at all in God's kingdom. And I think we need to hear that. We need to be reminded of that because selfish living, unfortunately, is one of our most common behaviors. And as you and I know, it begins very early in life. I saw it happen several weeks ago. I was at our church, got there early, which is what I usually do, and I went by the nursery to say hello to our nursery attendants and to look at the children. I always enjoy doing that, watching them interact with each other. Now, I got there early enough so that there was only one young boy in the nursery at that time. He had the whole place to himself, having a ball. Until suddenly a young mother dropped off her young daughter into the nursery. The young girl walked in, and immediately she spotted a toy on a shelf, a toy that wasn't being used. She walked over to that shelf, and just as she reached up to get that toy, that young boy moved in. Got right in front of her, reached through her, and grabbed that toy and held on to it as tight as he could and gave her one of those looks as if to say, it's mine. And you can't have it. Of course, it gave the nursery attendant a wonderful opportunity to do a little teaching about sharing. But what we see in children is something that we see with adults as well. There's nothing new about this. You and I know that story after story in the Bible tells us about people who were living selfishly. We think of Cain killing his brother Abel because of jealousy. Jacob stealing Esau's blessing from their father Isaac. The rich man who could not or would not let go of all of his riches to give to the poor. And of course, we think of the 12, Jesus' main disciples, who argued among themselves as to which one of them was the greatest, the most important. Now, for me, one of the most powerful examples in the Bible comes to us from the Old Testament book of Ecclesiastes. And I'd like for you to hear again these words from the writer. I accomplished great things. I built myself houses. I planted vineyards. I planted gardens and orchards with all kinds of fruit trees on them. I dug ponds to irrigate them. I bought many slaves, and there were slaves born into my household. I owned more livestock than anyone else who had ever lived in Jerusalem. I also piled up silver and gold from the royal treasuries of the lands I ruled. Men and women sang to entertain me, and I had all the women a man could want. Yes, I was great. Greater than anyone else who had ever lived in Jerusalem, and my wisdom never failed me. Anything I wanted, I got. I did not deny myself any pleasure. I was proud of everything I had worked for, and all this was my reward. Then I thought about all that I had done and how hard I had worked doing it, and I realized that it didn't mean a thing. It was like chasing the wind, of no use at all. This person learned a very valuable lesson. Unfortunately, not everyone has learned that lesson. There's a statement that I read earlier that points to the truth, and I'm quoting now. A man is a success if he gets up in the morning and gets to bed at night, and in between he does what he wants to do. You see the selfishness here? That particular definition of success is doing whatever you want to do. Well, as you know, one of the dominant teachings of Jesus is that of denying yourself. And Jesus did not mean that we're to do it for a day or a week or any limited period of time. He meant it one day at a time, every single day as long as we live. And Jesus pointed out that to deny ourselves means that every moment of your life should be spent in saying no to following your own will and saying yes to following God's will. And doing so means taking up your cross to follow the teachings and the example of Jesus himself. Concerning this very subject, I would like for you to just hear a very powerful and true statement from our great New Testament scholars, interpreters, Gene Boring and Fred Craddock. This is what they said. Christology, which means the study of Christ, Christology and discipleship are always related. How one understands Jesus' nature and role in God's plan directly affects how one understands what it means to be a follower of Jesus, and vice versa. A suffering Messiah means that disciples are also called to suffering and to self-sacrifice. And that's so very true. In our scripture from Luke's Gospel, Jesus had just told his disciples that he would be going to suffer and die. There was no better time for Jesus to instruct his disciples that they were to participate in the same self-giving life. And folks, Jesus meant for that to go far beyond the 12. A life of service to God, A life of service to God's people is for all followers of Christ, including us. We're to take up our cross, follow Him, denying ourselves for the service of God. Not long ago, I read a story, a moving story, about an old man who was riding on a city bus, holding a fresh, beautiful bouquet of flowers. He noticed a young lady sitting directly across from him. And he noticed that she had been staring at those flowers. Now, she didn't say anything, but it was very obvious to this elderly gentleman that she was crazy about those flowers. Well, at the next bus stop, this man needed to get off. And as he stood up, he looked across from him at that young lady one last time. And she was still staring at those flowers. So he walked over to her. He extended those flowers to give them to her. She said, "Oh no, thank you. I can't accept those." He said, "Please, I really want you to have these. I think my wife would want you to have them." He said, "In fact, I will tell her that I gave them to you." Well, it made her day. She got the biggest grin on her face. She hugged him. She thanked him very, very sincerely. And he turned around and made his way off the bus. She watched this old man as he walked away from the bus, as the bus began to roll away. She watched him as he walked through the gates of a cemetery to visit his wife. God did not create us to live primarily and solely for ourselves. We were created to live for God, for others, and then for ourselves. If any man would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross daily to follow me. Folks, think about how wonderful this world would be if every person followed Jesus' words here. I've been thinking about making a list of those who are and who will follow Jesus' words, His teachings, and His example. And so one question that I ask you, may I put your name on that list? May I add your name? Amen.